Get ready to dim the lights and lock your doors. Friday Night Frights is here to haunt your weekend. Every Friday night, we bring you spine-chilling tales of the macabre, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying. From cursed artifacts to shadowy creatures lurking in the dark, these stories will keep you on the edge of your seat long after the episode ends. Are you brave enough to listen? Tune in and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more eerie episodes. Our story tonight is Yellowjacket Summer by Robert R. McCammon. So grab a cup of something yummy, sit back and relax, and enjoy the story. "Car's comin', Mace," the boy at the window said. "Comin' lickety-split." "Ain't no car comin'," Mace replied from the back of the gas station. "Ain't never no cars comin'." "Yes, there is. Come look. I can see the dust rising off the road." Mace made a nasty sound with his lips and stayed where he was, sitting in the old cane chair that Miss Nancy had said she wouldn't befoul her behind to sit on. Mace was kind of sweet on Miss Nancy. The boy knew that. And he was always asking her to come over for a cold Coca-Cola, but she had a boyfriend in Waycross, and so that wouldn't do. The boy felt a little sorry for Mace sometimes, because nobody in town liked being around him much. Maybe it was because Mace was mean when he got riled, and he drank too much on Saturday nights. He smelled of grease and gasoline, too, and his clothes and cap were always dark with stains. "Come look, Mace," the boy urged, but Mace shook his head and just sat watching the Braves baseball game on the little portable TV. Well, there was a car, after all, trailing plumes of dust from its tires. But not exactly a car, the boy saw. It was a van, with wood trim on its sides. The van had been white before it had met up with 4 unpaved miles of Highway 241, but now it was reddened by Georgia clay, and there were dead bugs spotting the windshield. The boy wondered if any of them were yellowjackets. It was a yellowjacket summer for sure, he thought. Them things were just everywhere. "They're slowing down, Mace," the boy told him. "I think they're going to pull in here." "Lord A'mighty." He smacked his knee with one hand. "There's 3 men on base. You go on out and see what they want. Hear?" "Okay," the boy agreed, and he was almost out the screen door when Mace called, "All they want's a road map. They gotta be lost to be in this neck of nowhere. And tell 'em the gas truck's not due till tomorrow, Toby." The screen door slammed shut behind him, and Toby ran out into the steamy July heat as the van pulled up to the pumps. "There's somebody here," Carla Emerson said as she saw the boy emerge from the building. She released the breath she'd been holding for what seemed like the last 5 miles since they'd passed a road sign pointing them to the town of Capshaw, Georgia. The ancient-looking gas station, its roof covered with kudzu and its bricks bleached yellow by 100 summer suns, was a beautiful sight, especially since the Voyager's tank was getting way too low for comfort. Trish had been driving Carla crazy by saying, "It's on the E, Mama," every minute or so, and Joe made her feel like a twerp with his doomy pronouncement of, "Should have pulled over at the rest stop, Ma." In the back seat, Joe put aside the Fantastic Four comic he'd been reading. "I sure do hope they've got a bathroom," he said. "If I can't pee in about 5 seconds, I'm going to go out in a burst of glory." "Thanks for the warning," she told him as she stopped the van next to the dusty pumps and cut the engine. "Go for it." He opened his door and scrambled out, trying to keep his bladder from bouncing around too much. He was 12 years old, skinny, and wore braces on his teeth, but he was as intelligent as he was gawky, and he figured that someday God would give him a better chance with girls. Right now, though, Computer games and superhero comics took most of his attention. He almost ran right into the boy who had hair the color of fire. "Howdy," Toby said and grinned. "What can I do for you?" "Bathroom," Joe told him, and Toby motioned with a finger toward the back side of the gas station. Joe took off at a trot, and Toby called, "Ain't too clean in there, though. Sorry." That was the least of Joe Emerson's worries as he hurried around the small brick building back to where kudzu and stickers erupted out of the thick pine forest. There was just one door, and it had no handle on it, but it was mercifully unlocked. He went in. Carla had her window rolled down. "Could you fill us up, please, with unleaded?" Toby kept grinning at her. She was a pretty woman, maybe older than Miss Nancy, but not too old. Her hair was light brown and curly, and she had steady gray eyes set in a high cheekboned face. Perched in the seat next to her was a little brown-haired girl, maybe 6 or 7. "No gas," he told the woman. "Not a drop." "Oh," the nervous clenching sensation returned to her stomach. "Oh, no. Well, is there another station around here?" "Yes, ma'am." He pointed in the direction the van was facing. "Halliday's about 18 or 20 miles. They've got a real nice gas station." "But we're on E," Trish said. "Shh, honey." Carla touched the little girl's arm. The boy with red, close-cropped hair was still smiling, waiting for Carla to speak again. Through the station's screen door, Carla could hear the noise of a crowd roaring on a TV set. "Bet they gotta run," the boy said. "The Braves. Mace is watching the game." 18 or 20 miles, Carla thought. She wasn't sure they had enough gas to make it that far, and she sure would hate to run out on a country road. The sun was shining down hot and bright from the fierce blue sky, and the pine woods looked like they went on to the edge of eternity. She cursed herself as a fool for not stopping at that rest station on Highway 84, where there was a Shell gasoline and a Burger King, but she'd thought they could fill up ahead, and she was in a hurry to get to St. Simon's Island. Her husband, Ray, was a lawyer and had flown on to Brunswick for a business meeting several days ago. She and the kids had left Atlanta yesterday morning to visit her parents in Valdosta. Then they were supposed to swing up through Waycross and meet Ray for a vacation. "Stay on the main highway," Ray had told her. "You get off the highway, you can get lost in some pretty desolate country." But she thought she'd known her own state, particularly the area she'd grown up in. When the pavement had stopped and Highway 241 had turned to dust a ways back, she'd almost stopped and turned around. But then she'd seen the sign to Capshaw, so she'd kept on going and hoped for the best. But if this was the best, they were sunk. In the bathroom, Joe had learned that you spell relief P-E-E. It was not a clean bathroom, true, and there were dead leaves and pine straw on the floor, and the single window was broken, but he would have gone in an outhouse if he'd had to. The toilet hadn't been flushed for a long time, though, and the smell wasn't too pleasant. Through the thin wall he could hear a TV set on, the crack of a bat and the roar of a crowd. And another sound, too. Something that he couldn't identify at first. It was a low, droning noise, somewhere close, he thought, as he stood at the end of an amber river. Joe looked up, and his hand abruptly squeezed the river off. Above his head, the bathroom ceiling crawled with yellowjackets, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The little winged bodies with their yellow and black striped stingers crawled over and around each other, making a weird droning noise that sounded like a hushed, distant, and dangerous whisper. The river would not be denied. It kept streaming. As Joe stared upward with widened eyes, he saw maybe 30 or 40 of the yellowjackets take off, buzz curiously around his head, and then fly away through the broken window. A few of them, 10 or 15, Joe realized, came in for a closer look. His skin crept as the yellowjackets hummed before his face, and he heard their droning change pitch, become higher and faster, as if they knew they'd found an intruder. More left the ceiling. He felt them walking in his hair, and one landed on the edge of his right ear. The river would not stop, and he knew he must not cry out. Must not, because the noise in this confined place might send the whole colony of them into a stinging frenzy. One landed on his left cheek and walked toward his nose. 5 or 6 of them were crawling on his sweaty Conan the Barbarian t-shirt. And then he felt some of them land on his knuckles, and yes, even there, too. He fought back a sneeze as a yellowjacket probed his left nostril. A dark, humming cloud of them hung waiting over his scalp. "Well," Carla said to the red-haired boy, "I don't guess we've got much choice, do we?" "You 'bout empty?" Toby asked. "I'm afraid so. We're on our way to St. Simon's Island." "Long way from here." Toby looked off to the right, where a battered old pickup truck with red plastic dice hanging from the rearview mirror was parked. "That's Mace's truck. Maybe he'd drive over to Halliday for you and get you some gas." "Mace? Who's that?" "Oh, he owns this place. Always has. Want me to ask him if he'll do it?" "I don't know. Maybe we could make it ourselves." Toby shrugged. "Maybe you could, at that." But the way he smiled told Carla that he didn't believe she would, and she didn't believe it herself. Ray was going to pitch a fit about this. "I'll ask him if you like." Toby kicked a stone with the toe of one dirty sneaker. "All right," Carla agreed. "Tell him I'll pay him $5, too." "Sure thing." Toby walked back to the screen door. "Hey, Mace, lady out here needs some gas pretty bad. Says she'll pay you $5 to bring her back a few gallons from Halliday." Mace didn't answer. His face was blue from the TV screen's glow. "Mace, did you hear me?" Toby prodded. "I'm not going a damn place until this damn baseball game is over, boy," Mace finally said with a terrible scowl. "Been waiting all week for it. Score's 4-2, bottom of the 5th. "She's a looker, Mace," Toby said, casting his voice lower. "Almost as pretty as Miss Nancy." "I said leave me be." And for the first time Toby saw that Mace had a bottle of beer on the little table beside his chair. It wouldn't do to get Mace riled up, not on a hot day like this in the middle of Yellowjacket Summer. But Toby screwed up his courage and tried once more. "Please, Mace, the lady needs help." "Oh," Mace shook his head. "All right, if you'll just let me finish watching this damn game. I'll drive over there for her. God Almighty, I thought I was going to have me a peaceful day." Toby thanked him and walked back to the van. "He says he'll go, but he wants to watch the baseball game first. I'd drive myself, but I just turned 15, and Mace would whip my tail if I had a wreck. If you like, you can leave the van here, walk over to the cafe to get some sandwiches and stuff, and it's just around the bend, walking distance. That suit you?" "Yeah, that'd be fine." Carla wanted to stretch her legs, and something cold to drink would be wonderful. But what had happened to Joe? She honked the horn a couple of times and rolled up her window. "Probably fell in," she told Trish. The yellowjacket had decided not to enter Joe's nostril, Still, there were 30 or more of them on his t-shirt, and he could feel the damned things all in his hair. His teeth were clenched, his face pale and sweating, and yellow jackets were crawling all over his hands. Chills ran up and down his spine. He'd read somewhere about a farmer who had disturbed a yellow jacket nest, and by the time they got through with him, he was a writhing mass of stung flesh, and he died on the way to the hospital. At any second he expected a dozen stingers to rip through his skin at the back of his neck. His breathing was harsh and forced, and he was afraid that his knees would buckle and his face would fall into that filthy toilet. "Don't move," the red-haired boy said, standing in the bathroom's doorway. "They're all over you. Don't move now." Joe didn't have to be told twice. He stood frozen and sweating, and then he heard a low, trilling whistle that went on for maybe 20 seconds. It was a soothing, calming sound, and the yellow jackets started leaving Joe's shirt and flying out of his hair. As soon as they were off his hands, he zipped himself up and he got out of the bathroom with yellow jackets buzzing curiously over his head. He ducked and batted at them, and they flew away. "Yellow jackets," he gasped. "Must have been 1,000,000 in there." "No, not that many," Toby told him. "It's Yellowjacket Summer. But don't worry about him now. You're safe." He was smiling, and he lifted his right hand. The boy's hand was covered with them, layer upon layer of them, until it looked as if the hand had grown to grotesque proportions, the huge fingers striped with yellow and black. Joe stood staring, open-mouthed and terrified. The other boy whistled again, this time a short, sharp whistle, and the yellow jackets stirred lazily, humming and buzzing, and finally lifting off from his hand in a dark cloud that rose up and flew away into the woods. "See?" Toby slid his hand into his jeans pocket. "I said you were safe, didn't I? How did you do that?" "Joe!" It was his mother calling him. "Come on!" He wanted to run, wanted to leave tornadoes whirling under his sneakers, but he forced himself to walk at a steady pace around the gas station to where his mother and Trish were out of the Voyager and waiting for him. He could hear the crunch of the other boy's shoes on the gravel, following right behind him. "Hey," Joe said, his voice tightening as he tried to smile. "What's going on?" "We thought we'd lost you. What took you so long?" Before Joe could answer, a hand was placed firmly on his shoulder. "Got hisself stuck in the bathroom," Toby told her. "Old door ought to be fixed. Ain't that right?" The pressure of his hand increased. Joe heard a thin buzzing. He looked down, saw that the hand clamped to his shoulder had a yellow jacket lodged between the first and second fingers. "Mom?" Joe said softly. "I was—" He stopped, because beyond his mother and sister he could see a dark banner, maybe 200 or 300 yellow jackets, slowly undulating in the bright sunshine over the road. "Are you okay?" Carla asked. Joe looked like he was about to upchuck. "I think he'll live, ma'am," Toby said, and he laughed. "Just scared him a little, I guess." "Oh, well, we're going to get a bite to eat and something cold to drink, Joe. He says there's a cafe right around the bend." Joe nodded, but his stomach was churning. He heard the boy give a low, weird whistle, so soft that his mother couldn't possibly have heard it. The yellow jacket flew off from between the boy's fingers, and the awful waiting cloud of them began to break apart. "Just about lunchtime," Toby announced. "Think I'll walk that-a-way with you all." The sun burned down. A layer of yellow dust seemed to hang in the air. It's hot, Mama, Trish complained, before they'd walked even 10 yards away from the gas station, and Carla felt sweat creeping down her back under her pale blue blouse. Joe followed further behind, with the red-haired boy named Toby right on his heels. The road curved through the pine woods toward the town of Capshaw. It wasn't much of a town, Carla saw in another couple of minutes. There were a few unkempt-looking wooden houses, a general store with a "Closed, Please Come Again" sign in the front window, and a small whitewashed church, and a white stone building with a rust-eaten sign that announced it as the Clayton Cafe. In the gravel parking lot were an old gray Buick, a pickup truck of many colors, and a little red sports car with a convertible top pulled down. The town was quiet except for the distant cawing of a crow. It amazed Carla that such a primitive-looking place should exist just 7 or 8 miles off the main highway. In an age of interstates and rapid travel, it was easy to forget that little hamlets like this still stood on the back roads, and Carla felt like kicking herself in the butt for getting them into this mess. Now they were really going to be late getting to St. Simon's Island. "Afternoon, Mr. Winslow," Toby called and waved to someone off to the left. Carla looked. On the front porch of a run-down old house sat a white-haired man in overalls. He sat without moving, and Carla thought he looked like a wax dummy. But then she saw a swirl of smoke rise from his corncob pipe, and he lifted a hand in greeting. "Hot day today," Toby said. "It's lunchtime. You coming?" "Directly," the man answered. "Best fetch Miss Nancy, then. Got some tourists passing through." "I can see that," the white-haired man said. "Yeah," Toby grinned at him. "They're going to St. Simon's Island. Long way from here, huh?" The man stood up from his chair and went into the house. "Mom," Joe's voice was tense, "I don't think we ought to—" "I like your shirt," Toby interrupted, plucking at it. "It's nice and clean." And then they were at the Clayton Cafe, and Carla was going inside, her hand holding Trish's. A little sign said, "We're air-conditioned." But if that was so, the air conditioning was not functioning. It was as hot in the cafe as it was on the road. The place was small, with a floor of discolored linoleum and a counter colored mustard yellow. There were a few tables and chairs and a jukebox pushed back against the wall. "Lunchtime!" Toby called merrily as he followed Joe through the door and shut it behind them. "Brought some tourists today, Emma." Something rattled back in the kitchen. "Come say hello, Emma," Toby urged. The door to the kitchen opened, and a thin woman with gray hair, a deeply wrinkled face, and somber brown eyes came out. Her gaze went to Carla first, then to Joe, finally lingered on Trish. "What's for lunch?" Toby asked her. Then he held up a finger. "Wait, I bet I know. Alphabet soup, potato chips, and peanut butter and grape jelly sandwiches. Is that right?" "Yes," Emma replied, and now she stared at the boy. "That's right, Toby." "I knew it. See, folks round here used to say I was special, used to say I knew things that shouldn't be known." He tapped the side of his skull. "Used to say I had the beckoning touch. Ain't that right, Emma?" She nodded, her arms limp at her sides. Carla didn't know what the boy was talking about, but his tone of voice gave her the creeps. Suddenly it seemed way too cramped in this place, too hot and bright, and Trish said, "Ow, Mommy," because she was squeezing the child's hand too tightly. Carla loosened her grip. "Listen," she said to Toby. "Maybe I should call my husband. He's at the Sheridan on St. Simon's Island. He'll be real worried if I don't check in with him. Is there a phone I can use somewhere?" "Nope," Emma said. "Sorry." Her gaze slid toward the wall, and Carla saw an outline there where the payphone had been removed. "There's a phone at the gas station." Toby sat down at one of the stools facing the counter. "You can call your husband after lunch. By that time, Mace'll be back from Halliday." He began to spin himself around and around on the stool. "I'm hungry, hungry, hungry," he said. "Lunch is coming right up." Emma returned to the kitchen. Carla herded Trish toward one of the tables, but Joe just stood there staring at Toby. Then the red-haired boy got off his stool and joined them at the table, turning his chair around so he rested his elbows on the back. He smiled, watching Carla with steady, pale green eyes. "Quiet town," she said uneasily. "Yep." "How many people live here?" "A few, not too many. I don't like crowded places, like Halliday and Double Pines." "What does your father do? Does he work around here?" "Nah," Toby replied. "Can you cook?" I guess so." The question had taken her by surprise. "Raising kids, you'd have to cook, wouldn't you?" he asked her, his eyes opaque. "Unless you're rich and you go out to fancy restaurants every night." "No, I'm not rich." "Nice van you got, though. Bet it cost a lot of money." He looked over at Joe and said, "Why don't you sit down? There's a chair for you right beside me." "Can I get a hamburger, Mama?" Trish asked. "And a Pepsi?" "Alphabet soup's on the menu today, little girl. Gonna get you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, too. That suit you?" Toby reached out to touch the child's hair, but Carla drew Trish closer to her. The boy stared at her for a moment, his smile beginning to fade. The silence stretched. "I don't like alphabet soup," Trish said softly. "You will," Toby promised, and then his smile came back again, only this time it hung lopsided on his mouth. "I mean, Emma makes the best alphabet soup in town." Carla could not stand to look into the boy's eyes any longer. She shifted her gaze, and then the door opened and two people came into the cafe. One was the old white-haired man in overalls, and the other was a skinny girl with dirty blonde hair and a face that might have been pretty if it was clean. She was about 20 or 25, Carla thought, and she wore stained khaki slacks, a pink blouse that had been re-sewn in many places, and a pair of topsiders on her feet. She smelled bad, and her blue eyes were sunken and shocked. Winslow helped her to a chair at another table, where she sat muttering to herself and staring at her filthy hands. Neither Carla nor Joe could help but notice the swollen bites that pocked her face, the welts going right up into her hairline. "My God," Carla whispered, "what happened to her?" "Mace called on her," Toby said. "He's sweet on Miss Nancy." Winslow sat down at a table by himself, lit his pipe, and smoked it in grave silence. Emma came out with a tray, carrying bowls of soup, little bags of potato chips, and the sandwiches. She began to serve Toby first. "Have to go to the grocery store pretty soon," she said. "We're running low on near about everything." Toby started chewing on his sandwich and didn't reply. "My bread's got crust, Mama," Trish whispered to her mother. Sweat clung to her face, and her eyes were round and frightened. It was so hot in the cafe that Carla could hardly bear it. Her blouse was soaked with sweat, and now the unwashed smell of Miss Nancy almost sickened her. She felt Toby watching her, and suddenly she found herself wanting to scream. "Excuse me," she managed to say to Emma, "but my little girl doesn't like to eat the crust on bread. Do you have a knife?" Emma blinked, did not answer. Her hand hesitated as she put a bowl of soup in front of Joe. Winslow laughed quietly, a laugh devoid of mirth. "Sure thing," Toby said as he reached into his jeans pocket. He brought out a folded knife, got the blade extended. "I'll do it," he offered, and started carving the crust away. "Ma'am, here's your soup." Emma put a bowl in front of her. Carla knew she couldn't take a bite of hot soup, not in this already steaming place. "Can we have something cold to drink, please?" "Nothing but water here," Emma said. "Ice machine's broke. Hush up and eat your soup." She moved away to serve Miss Nancy. And then Carla saw it. Right there, spelled out in letters, floating on the top of her alphabet soup. Boy's crazy. The knife was at work, carving. Carla's throat was dust dry, but she swallowed anyway. Her eyes watched the moving blade, so terribly close to her little girl's throat. "I said, eat it!" Emma almost shouted. Carla understood. She put her spoon into the bowl, churned up the letters so he wouldn't see, then took a mouthful that all but seared her tongue. "Like it?" Toby asked Trish, holding the blade before her face. "Look at it shine. Ain't it a pretty thing?" He did not finish his sentence, because in that instant hot alphabet soup had been flung into his eyes, but not by Carla. It was by Joe, who had come out of his daze and now grabbed at the knife as Toby cried out and fell backward from his chair. Even blinded, Toby held off Joe as they fought on the floor, and Carla sat transfixed while precious seconds ticked by. "Kill him!" Emma screamed. "Kill the little bastard!" She began beating Toby with the tray she held, but in the confusion, most of her blows were hitting Joe. Toby flailed out with the knife, snagging Joe's t-shirt and ripping a hole in it. Then Carla was on her feet too, and Miss Nancy was screaming something unintelligible. Carla tried to grab the boy's wrist, missed, and tried again. Toby shouted and writhed, his face a twisted and terrible rictus, but Joe was holding on to him with all his dwindling strength. "Mama, Mama!" Trish was crying, and then Carla put her foot down on Toby's wrist and pinned the knife hand to the linoleum. The fingers opened, and Joe snatched up the knife. Both he and his mother stepped back, and Toby sat up with the fury of hell on his face. "Kill him!" Emma shouted, red to the roots of her hair. "Put that knife right through his evil heart!" She started to grab the blade, but Joe moved away from her. Winslow was standing up, still calmly smoking his pipe. "Well," he said quietly, "now you done it. Now you gone and done it." Toby crawled away from them toward the door, wiping his eyes clear with his forearm. He sat up on his knees, then slowly got to his feet. "He's crazy as hell," Emma said. "He's killed everybody in this damn town." "Not everybody, Emma," Toby replied. The smile had returned. "Not yet." Carla had Trish in her arms, and she was so hot she feared she might pass out. All the air was heavy and stagnant, and now Miss Nancy was grinning into her face and pulling at her with her filthy hands. "I don't know what's going on here," Carla finally said, "but we're getting out. Gas or not, we're leaving." Are you? Really? Toby suddenly inhaled and let the air out in a long, trilling whistle that made Carla's skin creep. The whistling went on and on. Emma screamed, "Shut him up! Somebody, please, shut him up!" The whistling abruptly stopped on an ascending note. "Get out of our way," Carla said. "We're leaving." "Maybe, maybe not. It's Yellowjacket Summer, lady. Them things are just everywhere." Something touched the cafe's window. A dark cloud began to grow, to spread across the outside of the glass. "Ever been stung by a yellowjacket, lady?" Toby asked. "I mean bad, deep stung? Stung right to the bone? Stung so bad that you'd scream for somebody to cut your throat and end the misery?" The windows were darkening. Miss Nancy whimpered and began to cower under a table. "It's Yellowjacket Summer," Toby repeated. "They come when I call 'em. They do what I want 'em to. Oh, I speak their tongue, lady. I've got the beckoning touch." Winslow shook his head. "Now you've gone and done it." The bright sunlight was going away. Darkness was falling fast. Carla heard the high, thin, droning noise from the thousands of yellowjackets that were collecting on the windows, and a trickle of sweat ran down her face. "State trooper come here once, looking for somebody, I forget who. He says, 'Boy, where are your folks? How come ain't nobody round here?' And he was going to put a call through on his radio, but when he opened his mouth, I sent 'em in there. They went right smack down his throat. Oh, you should have seen that trooper dance." Toby giggled at the obscene memory. "They stung him to death from the inside out, but they won't sting me, 'cause I speak their tongue." The light was almost gone, just a little shard of red-hot sun breaking through when the mass of yellowjackets shifted. "Well, go on then," Toby said, and motioned toward the door. "Don't let me stop you." Emma said, "Kill him right now! Kill him and they'll fly off." "Touch me," Toby warned, "and I'll make 'em squeeze through every damn chink in this place. I'll make 'em sting your eyeballs out and go up your ears, and I'll make 'em kill the little girl first." "Why? For God's sake, why?" "Because I can," he answered. "Go on. Your van's just a short walk." Carla sat Trish down. She looked into the boy's face for a moment, then took the knife from Joe's hand. "Give it here," Toby ordered. She hesitated in the twilight, ran her forearm across her face to mop up some of the sweat, and then she walked to Toby and pressed the blade against his throat. His smile faltered. "You're going to walk with us," she said, her voice quavering. "You're going to keep them off, or I swear to God that I'll shove this right through your neck." "I ain't going nowhere." "Then you'll die here with us. I want to live, and I want my children to live, but we're not staying in this insane asylum. I don't know what you had planned for us, but I think I'd rather die. So which is it?" "You won't kill me, lady." Carla had to make him believe she would, though she didn't know what she'd do if the time came. She tensed, drove her hand forward in a short, sharp jab. Toby winced, and a little drop of blood ran down his throat. "That's it!" Emma crowed. "Do it! Do it!" A yellowjacket suddenly landed on Carla's cheek, another on her hand. A third buzzed dangerously close to her left eye. The one on her cheek stung her, the pain searing and vicious. It seemed to make her entire spine vibrate as if she'd suffered an electric shock, and tears came to her eyes, but she kept the blade against his throat. "One for one," he said. "You're going to walk with us," Carla repeated as her cheeks started swelling. "If either of my children is hurt, I'll kill you." And this time her voice was steady, though 4 yellowjackets crawled over her knuckles. Toby paused. Then he shrugged and said, "Okay, sure, let's go." "Joe, hold on to Trisha's hand, then grab my belt. Don't let go, and for God's sake, don't let her go either." She prodded Toby with the knife. "Go on now, open the door." "No," Winslow protested. "Don't go out there. You're crazy, woman." "Open it." Toby slowly turned, and Carla pressed the blade against the pulsing vein in his neck while she grasped his collar with her other hand. He reached out slowly, very slowly, and turned the doorknob. He pulled the door open, the harsh sunlight blinding Carla for a few seconds. When her vision had returned, she saw a dark, buzzing cloud waiting in the doorway. "I can put this in your neck if you try to run," she warned him. "You remember that." "I don't have to run. You're the one they want." And he walked into the cloud of yellowjackets with Carla and her children right behind him. It was like stepping into a black blizzard, and Carla almost screamed, but she knew that if she did, they were all lost. She kept one hand closed around Toby's collar and the knife digging into his neck, but she had to squeeze her eyes shut because the yellowjackets swarmed at her face. She couldn't find a breath, felt a sting, and then another on the side of her face, heard Trish cry out as she was stung too. "Get them away, damn it!" she shouted as 2 more stung her around the mouth. The pain ripped through her face. She could already feel it swelling, distorting, and at that instant panic almost swept her senses away. "Get them away," she told him, shaking him by the collar. She heard him laugh, and she wanted to kill him. They came out of the vicious cloud. Carla didn't know how many times she'd been stung, but her eyes were still okay. "You all right?" she called. "Joe? Trish?" "I got stung in the face," Joe said, "but I'm okay. So is Trish." "Hush the crying," she told the little girl. Carla's right eyelid had been hit, and the eye was starting to swell shut. More yellowjackets kept humming around her head, pulling at her hair like little fingers. "Some of 'em don't like to listen," Toby said. "They do as they please. Keep walking. Faster, damn you." Someone screamed. Carla looked over her shoulder, saw Miss Nancy running in the opposite direction with a swarm of several hundred yellowjackets enveloping her. The younger woman flailed madly at them, dancing and jerking. She took 3 more steps and went down, and Carla quickly looked away because she'd seen that the yellowjackets completely covered Miss Nancy's face and head. The screams were muffled. In another moment, they ceased. A figure stumbled toward Carla, clutching at her arm. "Help me! Help me!" Emma moaned. The sockets of her eyes were crawling with yellowjackets. She started to fall, and Carla had no choice but to pull away from her. Emma lay twitching on the ground, feebly crying for help. "You've gone and done it now, woman!" Winslow was standing untouched in the doorway as the thousands of yellowjackets flew in a storm around him. "Damn, you've done it!" But Carla and the kids were out of the worst of it now. Still, whining currents of yellowjackets followed them. Joe dared to look up, and he could no longer see the sun directly overhead. They had finally reached the gas station, and Carla said, "Oh, my God!" The van was a solid mass of yellowjackets, and the gas station's sagging old roof was alive with them. The pickup truck was still there. Over the whining and humming, Carla heard the sound of the baseball game on TV. "Help us!" she cried. "Please, we need help!" Toby laughed again. "Call him! Tell him to come out here! Do it now!" "Mace is watching the baseball game, lady. He won't help you." She shoved him toward the screen door. A few yellowjackets were clinging to the screen, but they took off as Toby approached. "Hey, Mace! Lady wants to see you, Mace." "Mom," Joe said, his lips swollen and turning blue. "Mom?" She could see a figure in there, sitting in front of the glowing TV screen. The man wore a cap. "Please help us," she shouted again. "Mom, listen. Help us," she screamed, and she kicked the screen door in. It fell from its hinges to the dusty floor. "Mom, when I was in the bathroom and he talked to somebody in there, I didn't hear anybody answer him." And then Carla understood why. A corpse sat before the TV. The man was long dead, many months at least, and he was nothing but a red clay husk with a grinning, eyeless face. "Get him, Mace!" the boy wailed, and he tore away from Carla's grip. She struck with the blade, caught him across the throat, but not enough to stop him. He shrieked and jumped like a top gone crazy. Yellowjackets began streaming from the corpse's eye sockets, the cavity where the nose had been, and the straining, terrible mouth. Carla realized with soul-numbing horror that the yellowjackets had burrowed a nest inside the dead man, and now they were pouring out of him by the thousands. They swarmed toward Carla and her children with relentless fury. She whirled around, picked up Trish under one arm, and shouted, "Come on!" to Joe. She raced toward the van where thousands more yellowjackets were stirring, starting to fly up and merge into a yellow and black striped wall. Carla had no choice but to thrust her hand into the midst of them, digging for the door handle. They covered her hand in an instant, plunged their stingers in, deep, as if directed by a single malevolent intelligence. Howling with pain, Carla searched frantically for the handle. The sea of yellowjackets flowed up her forearm, up over her elbow, and toward her shoulder, stinging all the way. Her fingers closed around the handle. She got the door open as yellowjackets attacked her neck, cheeks, and forehead. Both Trish and Joe were sobbing with pain, but all she could do was to throw them bodily into the van. She grabbed up handfuls of yellowjackets and crushed them between her fingers, then struggled in and slammed the door. Still, there were dozens of them inside. Enraged, Joe started swatting them with his comic book, took off one sneaker and used that as a weapon, too. His face was covered with stings, both eyes badly swollen. Carla started the engine, used the windshield wipers to brush a crawling mat of the insects aside, and through the windshield she saw the boy, his arms uplifted, his flame-colored hair now turned yellow and black, with the yellowjackets that clung to his skull, his shirt covered with them, and blood leaking from the gash on the side of his neck. Carla heard herself roar like a beast. She sank her foot to the floorboard. The Voyager leapt forward through the storm of yellowjackets. Toby saw and tried to jump aside, but his twisted, hideous face told Carla that he knew he was a step too late. The van hit him, knocking him flat. Carla twisted the wheel violently. The van hit him, knocking him flat. Carla twisted the wheel violently to the right and felt a tire wobble as it crunched over Toby's body. Then she was away from the pumps and speeding through Capshaw, with Joe hammering at Yellowjackets inside the van. "We made it!" she shouted, though the voice from her mangled lips did not sound human anymore. "We made it!" The van streaked on, throwing up plumes of dust behind its tires. The treads of the right front tire were matted with scarlet. The odometer rolled off the miles, and through the slit of her left eye, Carla kept watching the gas gauge's needle as it vibrated over the E. But she did not let up on the accelerator, taking the van around the sudden curve so fast it threatened to fly off the road into the woods. Joe killed the last of the Yellowjackets, and then he sat numbly in the back, holding Trish close. Finally, pavement returned to the road, and they came out of the Georgia pines at a 3-way intersection. A sign said Halliday, 9 miles ahead. Carla sobbed with relief and shot the van through the intersection at 70 miles an hour. 1 mile passed, a second, a third, and a fourth. The Voyager started up a hill, and Carla felt the engine kick. "Oh, my God," she whispered. Her hands, clamped to the steering wheel, were inflamed and horribly swollen. "No, no!" The engine stuttered, and the van's forward progress began to slow. "No!" she screamed, throwing herself against the wheel in an effort to keep the van going. But the speedometer's needle was falling fast, and then the stuttering engine went silent. The van had enough steam left to make the top of the hill, and it rolled to a halt about 15 feet from the declining side. "Wait here," Carla said. "Don't move." She got out, staggered on swollen legs to the rear of the van, and put her weight against it, trying to shove it over the hill. The van resisted her. "Please, please," she whispered, and kept pushing. Slowly, inch by inch, the Voyager started rolling forward. She heard a distant droning noise, and she dared to look back. About 4 or 5 miles away, the sky had turned dark. What resembled a massive yellow and black streaked thundercloud was rolling over the woods, bending the pine trees before it. Sobbing, Carla looked down the long hill that descended in front of the van. At its bottom was a wide S-curve, and off in the green forest were the roofs of houses and buildings. The droning noise was approaching, and twilight was falling fast. She heard the muscles of her shoulder crack as she strained against the van. A shadow fell upon her. The van rolled closer to the decline. Then it started rolling on its own, and Carla hobbled after it, grabbed the open door, and swung herself up into the seat just as it picked up real speed. She gripped the wheel, and she told her children to hang on. What sounded like hail started pelting the roof. The van hurtled down the hill as the sun went dark in the middle of Yellowjacket Summer. Well, thank you for listening to this week's eerie story. And I tell you, there's almost nothing worse than getting stung by a swarm of yellowjackets. You see, I'm a beekeeper, and last fall I had a swarm of yellowjackets attack my hives. I actually stood out there with a pair of scissors, cutting those little devils in half as they tried to make their way into my hives and kill my bees. My bees worked really hard trying to defend their hive, but There were literally thousands of yellowjackets swarming them, too many to stop, and eventually, in the course of about 3 days under attack, they killed all my bees and robbed the drone cells. I was able to pull out the honey frames, but I lost all my bees, 3 healthy colonies. So I'm starting over again this year, and I've spent the winter studying ways to prevent this from happening again. But anyway, it was because I'm a beekeeper that I developed a product called Bee Itch Stop. It's an all-natural formula that takes the sting out of a bite, stops the itching, and prevents the swelling of stings and bites, whether it's mosquito, bee, wasp, or yellowjacket, or anything else that takes a bite out of you, like spiders. You can buy it right here on our website. It really works, and a bottle should last you an entire season. It's safe for all ages and all skin types, so do yourself a favor and order a bottle. You'll be happy you did. Until next week, this is your host, Ginger Winters. Have a great week, everyone.